In today's video, I'm going to cover how to sort through feedback and what it means to listen to your book. So we will start with sorting through feedback. So because I did not hear very much about receiving feedback and sorting through it when I was first editing my Viking book, Out of the Dark, I was not prepared. The first time I got feedback, it floored me. I was done. I thought I was a terrible writer. I thought I could never be a good writer. I thought my book was terrible, and I thought that there's no way I could make it better. And that's all because I did not have a firm understanding of how to sort through feedback and how to really use it to my advantage. So I don't know if I've just not dug deep enough or not, but I have not heard people talk about this very much at all. And since getting feedback is such a huge part of being a writer, it makes me ask, why? Why don't people talk about it as much as they should? So that's why I'm making this video, to share what I think about sorting through feedback and maybe to help you out with getting your own feedback and sorting through it. So before we begin with how to receive feedback, I want to start with a list of things that we should keep in mind. And there's 4 things, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. 4 things we should keep in mind. And the first of that is beliefs. If you have a different belief than your reader, there's going to be some conflict between that. As a Christian writer who includes a ton of biblical truths in my books, I find it's really hard for me to get good constructive feedback on my work, because non-Christians will do one of many things. They will not give feedback on that area. They will try to argue with your belief that you're putting forth. They will criticize it instead of critiquing your work, or they will give shallow thoughts. Sometimes, rarely, but you will find them, they will give honest opinions. And there was this great beta reader of mine for Out of the Dark, and he was agnostic, but he helped me figure out, okay, how do I want to showcase my beliefs in this scene? How do I want to explain them and integrate them into the story? And I feel like he was kind of a rare instance. You will find them, but they're just not as common out there. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind, is different beliefs. Now, if you're able to find beta readers with similar or the same beliefs as you, that is great. They are helpful for ensuring that you present those truths correctly. And they will be encouraging and things like that. They're really helpful. But keep in mind that people with different beliefs than you are also really helpful, because they can show you what people without your beliefs, how they will react. And I found that super helpful to make sure I'm presenting this in a way that other people can understand. So that's the first point. Second point is styles and genres. We need to keep this in mind, because if your beta reader is writing in a different genre or has a completely different style than you, there's going to be some difficulty in that. Because, for example, how you write sci-fi is different than how you write historical fiction. And it will make it really hard for the sci-fi person to give you good feedback on your historical fiction novel. And it works the other way around. Because there's so much going on in those books that is completely different. For example, whenever I beta read and let's say I'm beta reading a sci-fi. I'm not interested in sci-fi, for one, but then another, I don't really understand how that works. All the science stuff and whatnot, I cannot give good feedback on it because I don't understand it. And I don't understand what they should put in there, what they shouldn't put in there, what they don't need in there, what they do need in there. But it's easy for me to give feedback on historical fiction because I've written a lot of historical fiction and I'm familiar with it. And some genres I feel like go together pretty well. For example, even before I started reading and writing fantasy, I felt pretty good about giving feedback on fantasy. I feel like it's because of the different culture, but it's a culture that's kind of like historical fiction. It's different enough, and the way you present it is pretty similar to historical fiction. But then sci-fi, it just has so many things that is not similar to historical fiction that I can't really give good feedback on it. But fantasy was pretty easy for me to give feedback on because it is similar enough to historical fiction. Same with crime and thriller. I haven't read or written any of that, but to me those are similar enough that if you write thriller and your beta reader writes crime, then you should be able to give each other good feedback. Now, besides genres, I mentioned styles. And style is a huge part of writing because that's your prose, right? And so, from what I've seen, these are going to be huge generalizations. But what I've seen is modern writers tend to really like quick, snappy scenes, snappy prose that integrates emotions and descriptions and things like that. And you're trying to integrate all of them in these short, snappy little sentences, and you can't really dive into them. On the other hand, you have the old-fashioned writers. I'm more old-fashioned, where they prefer slowed down prose, and you get to really pause, you consider emotions, you get to consider the description, and you get to pause to set the scene. Now I feel like there's pros and cons to each style, but for the sake of our illustration here, let's say you write modern style, completely modern style, short, snappy, fast-paced, high conflict, high tense, and then you're giving feedback on old-fashioned prose, which is slow and deep, methodical. And you're not really going to be able to give the old-fashioned writer very good critiques, will you? So I ran across that sort of thing a lot because I am old-fashioned. I love old phrases, old ways of doing things, slightly archaic language, because I think it's beautiful. But a lot of modern beta readers will say, no, you need to integrate this, you need to do this, blah, 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 blah. Which is fine, which would be applicable to other people, right? But it wasn't applicable to me because they were trying to make my style their style. So it makes it really hard to give feedback because of that. It took me a really long time to figure out how to write well in old-fashioned prose style. And frankly, I'm still learning how. There's so much in there and so much of modern writing style that I like, and I tweak it a little bit to match my personal style. And so this is something else you need to keep in mind with your beta readers. Are they like completely modern? Are they completely old-fashioned? Are they a mix? And so you can go from there and conclude what is good advice or bad advice. I will do a I will do a post on personal style in the future, if you guys are interested. If you've made it this far through the video and you are interested in hearing my personal thoughts about style and your personal style, leave that in the comments and I will see what I can do to talk about that, because I find that really interesting too. What makes a personal style too? That would be interesting. And while I'm at it, if you guys are wanting me to talk about something else that I have not covered yet, leave that in the comments too. I don't care if it's related to this video or not. So I want to give you guys what you want to hear, so, or want to learn and stuff. So go ahead and share what you want me to cover. All right, point number 3 that we should keep in mind is each book is different. If you've read more than, 5 books in your life, which I'm sure if you're watching this video, you probably have. If you've read more than 5 books, you will notice that every book is different. Their theme, characters, arcs, settings, values, styles, details, prose, poetry, story structure, and more. I just listed 10 things, 10 different things. And each of those 5 books could be completely different. And because of that, will one piece of advice be able to apply to all the other books if all those 10 things are different? No. So because of that, I believe that all writing advice is good, but not all writing advice is applicable. Okay? Because every book is so different that one size fits all isn't an option. Your job is to sort through the good and bad, well, the applicable and non-applicable advice, and categorize them in each correctly. All right, the last thing to keep in mind is they will be harsh. Beta readers are harsh. You're asking them to be. You're asking them to be harsh, essentially. When you say, here, give feedback on my book, they say, oh yes, thank you. And then they just blue line it all over the place. They're supposed to. That's what they're there for. If you're not expecting this, though, it will knock you off your feet and leave you wondering what happened for like days or maybe weeks. When I first received feedback on my very first book that I had written, it shocked me. And I fell into, am I a bad writer? Is this a bad book? I'm definitely a bad writer. This is definitely a bad book. I can never improve. Don't give in to those thoughts. Don't fall for them. Feeling like a great author is easy when no one tests your abilities. If you think you're great at drawing and you've never showed your work to anyone else, will you know if you're a good drawer or not? Probably not. You won't know if it hits correctly. You won't know if it will mean something to someone else unless you share your drawings. Same with writing. You need to let other people see your work so that you can get feedback and say, oh, I need to learn more in this area in order to improve myself. And if they're being harsh, that's actually a good thing, because they're exposing all the new things that you need to learn in order to improve. If, on the other hand, they are criticizing you and attacking you, cutting you down, that is not beta reading. But you need to tell the difference between critiquing you and critiquing your book. When they're critiquing you, they're not talking about your writing stuff. They might be like, oh, this is so stupid, why'd you come up with this? Things like that target you instead of your book. So if they're doing that, they are not the right beta reader for you. But if they're saying, hey, this does not work, this doesn't make sense, this character did something out of character, they're not criticizing you. They're criticizing your book. And it's not criticizing either, it's critiquing. Don't get those two mixed up. Criticizing is negative. Critiquing is positive because it can help you grow. Okay? So those are the 4 things that you should keep in mind before you get feedback and while you get feedback. And so now that we got that covered, I'm going to discuss things to do before you get beta readers, because this will help you be more prepared to give and receive critiques. Alright, the first one is learning the basics of storytelling. So notice I said the basics here. No one is an expert on writing. Even the greats are not experts on writing. They're further along in their journey than we are, but they still don't know everything. I don't know everything. Your beta readers don't know everything. But knowing the basics of storytelling will help you to know, okay, they pointed out that this is wrong with my book. I know what they're talking about. I know what they're addressing. And so from there, you can decide whether or not their suggestion on how to fix that, if they give you a solution, whether or not that will be applicable to this situation. Oh, things that you should learn, just to name a few things, is the basics of story structure, character arcs, and prose. And those are the 3 main areas that you should know in general, just to write, you know. But this also really helps with beta readers and feedback. You should also learn how stories function. Maybe research the different types of structures, because yes, there is more than just a 3-act structure. There's all sorts of structures. If you look it up, it's just mind-boggling. I have not researched any of those yet, but I'm interested. But the 3-act structure works pretty well for me. As an example, there's a snowflake method, I think. And anime does something different. It's where every single plot beat raises it, and then when you get to the conclusion, it goes down. So there's all sorts of different ones. There's not just 3 arc structures. Although that's the most simple one, I would think. Something else you should do is study the do's and don'ts of prose, so that you can better point out people's mistakes and say, hey, you should work on this, and they're like, oh, okay. So learn about the do's and don'ts of prose. That's also very applicable for your own writing. Learn how to set a solid scene. That's a lot of S's. Set a solid scene using all 5 senses. And let me tell you, not very many writers use the sense of smell, which, if you can do that, you're ahead of your game in that area. So I would challenge you to write with all 5 senses. It's really interesting trying to do that. You can also try to wrap your head around psychic distance, which it took me a while, and sometimes I still forget what it is, and I have to learn it all over again. So if you guys have any resources on psychic distance, there's more S's and C's in there now. If you have anything that explains that, you can put that in the comments, and I can check it out, and other people can check it out. I would be curious to see what it says. All right. Now, second thing you should do before you get beta readers is to know your book inside out. So this helps you to really weigh critiques and feedback based on your book's needs and your goals for your book. So here's some things that you should know about your book. Hopefully you know about this before you start writing, but all writers have different approaches to writing. But here's some things you should know before beta reading. So you want to know your theme, the basic outline, like a list of the plot points, which I can get to in another video if you like. Your audience, who you're writing for, what age group, etc. Your goal, word count, how long you want it to be. The values you want to present. The character arcs. The style you want, because like we talked about, style is very important. The various details and research you want to include, because for example with historical fiction, it's a spectrum of hardly any details at all to like chock full of all the details you can think of. How tar smells, how tar feels, and things like that. It's like the very tiny little details or just the big picture. There's a wide range in that, and it's helpful to know how much you want to include. And also the trouble areas that you'll need more help on. Knowing this is really helpful because you can ask your beta readers, hey, does this sound right? Does this sound plausible? And they can tell you yay or nay. Like, I really struggle with fight scenes. And unfortunately, in my Viking book, there were fight scenes, lots of fight scenes. There were battle scenes. And because I'm not able to picture things in my head, like, at all, it was really hard for me to write those fight scenes. And I had to get a lot of feedback on those and just be like, hey, does this even make sense? And if you don't know fighting techniques, it's good to ask, okay, can a character with this weapon and this skill set defeat this character with this weapon and this skill set? So that is very important because the people who know about this stuff will just get rid of their suspension of disbelief and throw your book out the window or something. Be like, they're not writing this correctly. I feel like doing that when people get clothing wrong, historical clothing wrong. It drives me bonkers, just complete bonkers. If you're writing historical fiction, please do the details correctly. Even if you're not going super deep into the details, please include them correctly. I'll talk about historical fiction and stuff in a couple months, I think. I have it all planned out. You'll see. Alright. Third thing you should do before you get beta readers is determine your reader boundaries. This is a completely personal thing. It's just what you're willing to read and what you are not willing to read. It will save you a lot of time, frustration, and guilt in the long run. And just the knowledge that you didn't read stuff that you don't want to read. I don't like saying certain things out loud. I don't even like saying it out loud. So you can read my blog post to find out exactly what I don't like reading. Certain graphic things I just cannot read. Out of good conscience, and other things I just cannot. And so I refuse to read it. Some other things, and then profanity. I can skim through like a little profanity, but if there's a lot, I just have to tell my beta readers, okay, I can't read this. And also if they are supporting or pushing a wrong view of God or the Bible, I cannot read any of that stuff either. I will allow graphic battle scenes because, like I said, I can't really picture things in my head. So unless it's like severely graphic, I can usually handle it. Like, for example, I think Count of Monte Cristo is pretty graphic in the things that they have in there, but I can usually handle it. So it's just your personal preference what you will or will not read, what bothers you, what does not bother you, things of that sort. So there you go. That is the basics in receiving feedback on your book. So following these guidelines will get you started, but you can always build on them, and I highly encourage you to. And with that out of the way, I get to talk about what it means to listen to your book. Now, as I mentioned, that's a very ambiguous phrase that I have heard many, many times, but no one's explained what it means. And I'm just like, come on, guys, like, what does it mean? Is it some secret code I'm not supposed to know? Like, why does no one ever talk about this if it's so important? But, while writing my 1940s Portal Fantasy book, I think I'm figuring it out what it means. So I thought I'd share this with you guys. So, even since writing my epic fantasy, the book before this, I've learned so much about writing and everything about it that I'm really excited to put it into use. And what I like to do with learning how to write, well, this is my personal opinion on what it's like to learn how to write. Learning to write is not someone telling you how to do it. It's internalizing the information and then using it when it's necessary, when it needs to be used. And it's just as absorbing all you learn, then applying it when it is applicable. Which leads me to the phrase of listening to your book. Now, I've been writing my Portal Fantasy book for several months now, and in January I suddenly realized, I'm listening to my book, and I'm writing it the way that it wants to be written. And which surprised me because I didn't really know what it meant before, but then I suddenly got a light bulb moment of what it means. So, simply put, it means this. Listen to your book means you know your book so well, its characters, setting, conflicts, goals, arcs, structure and style, and all the rest. You know that so well that you can easily determine what and what not, and how to write it. Okay? You instinctively know how it needs to be written if you know your book well enough at its core. I'll run through a few examples to illustrate this, because I know this is really abstract, and some people, including myself, don't really do well with abstract stuff. So I am reading my blog post, and it's been a while since I've read my blog post. It's been a while since I've written it, so that's why I keep looking over here, because I want to make sure I'm getting all the points and saying things that I want to say. If you guys are wondering why I keep looking over here. Alright. I might read more of this stuff straight from the blog post just because I want to get this all right. Because this is so, like, abstract, you know. So, the first example of knowing what and how to write it. My book, my Portal Fantasy, is set in the 1940s during World War II. This will call for older words and expressions, slightly archaic sentence structures, and vocabulary, which, you know, I love. So some things I've included is like, you're a brick, and fun little things like that. And my book is all the way on the other side of my room, so I'm not gonna grab it because I don't want to move right now. But I include a lot of older phrases and words that you don't hear nowadays, because it's set in a slightly older time period. And another thing is the book is being narrated in first person past tense by the main character, and she's telling the story when she's an old woman, looking back on the adventure. So this allows for more reflection, a more lighthearted tone toward it. It's not a lighthearted book because it has some really deep, really serious, dark stuff that it's dealing with. But sometimes I'm able to have a more lighthearted tone toward it because she's looking back on her experiences, which makes it interesting, and it makes it a lot easier for me to include jokes and humor because I have a hard time with humor in my writing. So this has been great. It's naturally coming out of the book because of the narrator and stuff. So I'm able to do that. And it also allows me to compare the experiences to modern life and life back in the 1940s. Because when she was currently going through that, she would tie it back to things that she had experienced maybe a day ago in our world. But now that she's telling it in modern times, she can be like, oh yeah, it's just like, I don't know, a ringtone or something. I don't know. I haven't included that in the book. It's just an example. So I'm able to mix comparisons. Although it's set in the 1940s, she's telling it now, so it makes it interesting. And by nature, the book is slower. But there are high action scenes that pick up the pace significantly. So I'm able to write at a deeper level and really tighten up during the fast-paced scenes. The pacing in this book is really interesting because I'll drag it out. Not really drag it out. I'll draw it out because dragging is negative. But I'll draw it out, I'll really dwell on a certain thing. But then during a high action scene, I'll like condense that really and get it over with really quick if I want to. Sometimes I dwell on a really action-packed scene just so that we get the full experience of it too. So it really depends, and that comes from listening to my book. And as a quick recap, you should know it just means knowing your book so well that you know how to write it and what to and what not to include. It is knowing your book and making choices that are in line with your predetermined guidelines. But it doesn't mean sticking to those guidelines so much so that you miss the bigger picture of the book. In case the structure changes or a character changes or something else needs to change that you thought you had it all figured out. There's a balance here between structure and rigid decision and just flow and ease with the book and letting it develop over time. And as someone who started out as a pantser and is moving toward plotter, I kind of get the best side of both worlds because I'm really comfortable with letting it just shape as I go along, but then I also structure my book as much as I can, not chapter by chapter very much, but I outline the book, then I include several scenes in between each plot point, things like that, so that I have a firm grasp of the story. But then if it needs to change, I just add a couple scenes in between it. I change things around, move things around if I need to. And it works as long as you are listening to your book, as long as you're paying attention to the way it's headed, where you've come from, your characters and all that. So there's a lot of listening and thinking involved in writing, which is fascinating. And you need to really listen to your gut because it all comes down to like your gut instincts know how to write a book better than your brain does. And I'm being honest and very serious about that. It does. It does. And so, all that brings us to the end of another long post, of another long video. I know it's probably going to be like 40 minutes long by the time I'm done, but that was a lot to get through. And if you made it to the end, thank you for sticking with me. Give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment on what was helpful for you. And if you've gotten feedback before, what helps for you. And if you haven't gotten feedback before, if you're comfortable doing this, you can share what you're most afraid of or hesitant about, and I can help you out. Other writers can help you out. And if you have other questions or other thoughts about literally anything, you can leave something in the comments and I will get to it as soon as possible. I check the comments a couple times a day, probably too many times a day. So I will see it. But yeah, these are all the things that I wish I knew before I got feedback. I feel like knowing these things moving forward will really help me in writing this book. And if you want to know my future plans for future books and stuff, you can head over to Patreon. I am putting a post together about my next book and where I'm at with that. So if you want to learn about that, go check out Patreon. And while you're in the description looking at those links and stuff, make sure to check out my book too. My book, Out of the Dark. I think you guys will really love it. So I have one last thought before I go. And this is another one where I'm going to read from the screen a little bit more. With all these tips and suggestions in mind, I don't want you to assume your books and your writing are perfect and none of this feedback applies to you. That is arrogance and pride, and none of that gets you anywhere. The feedback may be right, but it doesn't need to stay that way. You're able to use critiques that you receive to improve your writing so that you can create the best books possible. If I've been able to improve, you're able to improve. And with that, I would like to wish you a happy writing day.